the second right circle here at David Hall with our two very esteemed guests from Bombay and Amritsar, Kiran and Preeti. A very warm welcome to you on behalf of PKF Kochi and the Casino Group of Hotels. May I request both of you to please come on stage? My name is Nazia Yusuf. I am the Ehsas woman of Kochi. Today's event is in collaboration with our hospitality partners, the Casino Group of Hotels and Pandal and the David Hall Art Gallery. I want to share a little bit about Prabha Khaitan Foundation with you before we start. The Prabha Khaitan Foundation is a non-profitable trust based in Kolkata and was founded by eminent literature and cultural activist late Dr. Prabha Khaitan in the early 1980s. Her vision of working for better tomorrow is woven in her famous words, "Karma hi jivan hai," work is life. The Right Circle is an initiative by the Prabha Khaitan Foundation where the written word breathes life in the minds of both creators and enthusiasts. And among others, we also have so the Right Circle is one of our formats. The Prabha Khaitan Foundation also hosts other programs like Kalam, Kitab, Loves, and Akar. The Prabha Khaitan Foundation is deeply committed to socio-cultural activities and humanitarian causes. We played a piece of music here from 4 onwards, and that was composed by Ricky Cage, the 3-time Grammy Award-winning artist. Ricky's music raises awareness for climate change and the urgency to step up sustainability measures in every sphere of our lives. This December, the music of the month is Mere Desh, Mera Gaon. My country, my village. It is a song about journeying around the world and then returning to India because one's heart lies in the motherland. Now, without wasting any more time, let me introduce our very esteemed guest for the day, Kiran. I am meeting Kiran after 6 years now, so I had the pleasure of hosting Kiran Manral at the Dehradun Community Literature Festival, which I used to do in Dehradun. So we meet after years, and it is such a joy to finally be able to host you at home. So this is home. So welcome, Kiran. Kiran is an author. Her first published book, The Reluctant Detective, came out in 2011. She has published a total of 15 books across genres since. Her articles and columns have appeared in the Times of India, Tehelka, DNA, Yovoto, She the People, The Daily O, Scrawl, BuzzFeed, New Woman, Femina, Verve, and Elle, Cosmopolitan, and The Condé Nast Traveler, The Telegraph, and many more publications. She's also a podcaster, hosting Chasing Creativity and co-hosting Naturanti, very popular podcast and available across all audio platforms. She's a TEDx speaker and was a mentor with the Viral Voices Global Mentoring Walk, was a Hillary Clinton initiative. She was awarded the Women Achievers Award by Young Environmentalist Association in 2013 and the Indian Council of UN Relations, supported by the Ministry for Women and Child Development. In 2018, for excellence in the field of writing. She was named one of the Women Innovators 1000 Women of Asia 2021. Kiran, own it. But it is phenomenal to be an achiever, and I think it is very inspiring for all the young women who are out here, to hear, to know, and to learn more. So, and that is also what the Right Circle is for. So, in conversation with Kiran today is Preeti Gill. Preeti is from Amritsar. I was sharing this to Michael. Preeti is my counterpart She's an Ehsaas woman of Amritsar. So we, the Ehsaas women, we take Prabha Khaitan to the cities we reside in, and we say open our homes to Prabha Khaitan and to the world for both to meet and to nurture the idea of cultural traditions, literature, art, and to foster what we believe. I think the soul of humanity still continues to follow through with literature, and we hope that that is what we can offer with PKF events now and going forward also. So over to you, Preeti.
Very much for that introduction, and it's really lovely to be here. And as I was saying when we were just chatting outside, this is such a pleasant change because normally the PKF events are held in five-star hotels, and I think this place brings to it a really special energy. It's the place that art lives in, and culture lives in, and literature lives in, and good books live in. So I think this is really the right kind of setting, and Kiran and I are really delighted, I think, that we are here. Another thing that I also want to tell you is it's my first visit to Kochi. And just flying in from Delhi this morning, looking down, it was misty, and then there were sort of hills, and everything was green and lush and water soaked, and coming from the arid north, I've never seen anything like this. So it was a particular delight to be able to actually see a place which is so green and so full of water. So that was really a wondrous sight in the morning. Of course, getting away from Delhi's pollution in itself is a blessing. So having said all of that, what I want to actually begin with is your new book, of course, because this is the one that I just read. All those who wander, and all those who wander are not necessarily lost, is what you say. So because I'm coming from the north and I'm coming so far south, it seems to me that I've also time traveled. I've come from one universe into quite another universe. And I would like you to actually begin by telling us something about the book itself, which I don't think people would have read it here right now. So if you can give a background and why you chose to do this book in particular, because I think your last three books have been fairly dark, and this one also follows that.
I don't know if you choose to do a book, Preeti. The book sort of chooses you to do it. We all sort of go through life wondering what would happen if we had taken another path, if we had taken another decision, if we had done something a little differently, what avenues would have opened up, how things would have changed, what repercussions would it have had. And this book is basically about examining that from the life of a young girl and an older woman who's looking back and maybe wants to warn the young girl about something that she will be compelled to take a decision about. How did I... And to do this, she must go back and confront this young girl. But where does she find this young girl? So she finds her in different dimensions. That's basically the premise of the book. Whether she manages to convince her or not, what happens to them, what comes out of all this meddling in their past and your alternate versions, for that you have to read the book.
Yeah, that is true. But also, like Nazi had also mentioned right now, that you've written in so many different genres. So the books actually span a whole range of content. There's fiction and there's non-fiction, there's parenting, there's also biographies of these outstanding women that you had done. And of course, other than that, the fact of murder, the fact of domestic abuse, but at the heart of everything is, I think, human relationships. So would you like to tell us what it is, going across all these genres, what pulls you to each of the different strands that you continue to pick up, and this constant focus on I think even in this book, relationships.
That's a very, very interesting question, Preeti. I don't think anyone has asked me that before. Uh, what pulls me to the various genres that I write, I think it's life stages. So when I wrote the first book, The Reluctant Detective, I was a school gate mom. I was standing outside the school gates every day waiting for the not the infant, the brat, as I used to call him in my blog, to come out, and my life was around that circumference of, the kitty parties and birthday parties of the kids and school projects and all of that, and that's reflected in the books that I wrote then. After that, I decided to, after that actually, I think someone asked me, okay, you've written a book, is it romance? I said, no, it's not romance. Is it chick lit? I said, no, it's not chick lit, it's mom lit, if anything. And there's a murder, and there's like people dying, many dead bodies happening, so I don't know if I can even call it mom lit. Then I said, okay, let me explore romance, and I wrote romance for the heck of it. I wrote chick lit for the heck of it. But then I found myself getting drawn to very darker subjects and very disturbing subjects. And I felt, while I was writing those funny books and those light books, and all my love of Woodhouse came out in the way I wrote those books. But then there was also the Stephen King reader in me who was begging to be let out. And I think then I gravitated to very dark subjects, to horror, to psychological thrillers. Now with time travel, with emotionally very disturbing subjects, with More Things in Heaven and Earth. I think I'm, as you say, exploring relationships. I'm also exploring damaged people. So how we've been damaged, what has damaged us, how we confront that damage, how do we heal, and if we heal, how do we heal? I think, or if we don't heal at all, what is the closure that we get? I think all the books, the darker book, explore those.
Yeah, but then in this also, for example, or in the book that, the one about the two stepsisters, you said they are damaged people because they have obviously gone through a lot of, whether it's abuse or suffering or, in this case also rape and various other things that happen. Despite the time travel, you cannot get rid of all the horror that actually one confronts every day if one opens the newspaper in one's own country, in one's own town. All of that also seems to travel across time. You don't seem to ever leave it behind. It's with you everywhere. And so that was one thing that I found interesting, that there are not new kinds of horror, but the old horrors are still with you. Secondly, also that the strength of the women, because the mother in this book, she has a spine of steel, and she teaches her daughter to also follow in the same way, despite, I'm giving away a few things, but I think they're important, because the daughter goes through a divorce or separation, she comes home, and as you write, which is a really lovely sentence, because it just tells you everything about a marriage, her marriage, she came back with everything else intact, all her suitcases and all the stuff inside the suitcases, but she came back damaged. So that was quite a sentence. So tell us a little bit more about, the women of steel, because there is that. She's a different mother.
We've been fed this image of a mother who is all giving, all nurturing, unconditionally loving. I think that's what we grew up on. Our mothers are like that, a lot of our mothers. Some of us have different mothers and different mothers in this book. But not every woman is meant to be a mother. And a woman who cannot be a mother finds it very difficult to be a mother. And that's the mother in this book. She is a mother who is a mother maybe against her will. She does not know how to love a child. But she is very clear that she is in a marriage. I'm giving away something which is not a happy marriage. But she is not going to love the child unconditionally just because the child is born to her of this marriage. And that does damage the child, because I don't know if you remember this part where Nena winces as a mother comes towards her because she never knows whether she's going to hug her or hit her.
Yeah.
So the child grows up in that atmosphere of uncertainty. And what happens to these women? How does society look at them? Do we really acknowledge the fact that, mothers aren't always cast in the mold that we expect them to be? I wanted to explore that kind of a character. I wanted to explore that woman who is not satisfied with being a wife and a mother and wants to do something more and wants to define herself with something else and is restless in a marriage. And I think that's what I tried to write about here. And even in the other books, it's always the woman who's struggling to say something or to go beyond whatever she's been boxed in by. That's what I'm trying to show.
So if you will read that, because I marked out that page 218. Do you have a copy? Or
I don't have a copy.
Here. If you want. Mother's thing, which is
Okay.
quite outstanding. I may have also underlined it there, I don't know.
I didn't know you had a brother, I said. Aman never mentioned him. He's much younger than me, almost like my own son. He was born when I was a teenager. She paused and smiled. His birth was a scandal. My mother had been widowed for years when he was born. I looked at her in consternation. She continued. She was quite a character, my mother. She had an affair with a much younger man after my father died. I suspect he wasn't the first, but he was the first that I knew about, because I had a crush on him before I realized she was already sleeping with him. She wanted to keep the baby. One child she wanted, she said, from a beautiful man. She wasn't interested in the baggage of marriage to have a child. I nodded, I understood. We both had mothers who weren't cast from the mold they made regular mothers from. Mine had been unloving and rejecting. I had been born out of a love that had not been sanctioned by marriage. Hers had wanted a child without a husband. Both had been mothers who defied the norms of what motherhood meant in the tightly restricted spaces women had in a society men had defined the borders of.
Yeah, so because it also almost seems like a feminist text in a manner where you're trying to give agency to the woman much more than what society or patriarchy or people as we know it would allow them. So when you do something like that, because the book is otherwise time travel, it's futuristic, it's sci-fi, it's noir. But when you put in stuff like this, is there something you're trying to tell us? Something, not teaching, but something that you think is important to convey?
I think it's always at the back of my mind that when you look at statistics on gender parity, gender pay equality is not going to happen in 100 years. Domestic chores are going to continue to be the woman's headache for God knows how long, even in countries, so-called emancipated countries abroad, except for Scandinavian countries. Women do more of the household chores than men. We all know what the statistics on violence against women are in our country, in other countries, and how war zones use rape as a weapon, how the woman's body is a battle zone. I think I'm trying to say that this is not going to end anytime soon. And we need to keep talking about this, and we need to keep bringing this up constantly, and we can't whitewash everything that's happening around us, even in our fiction. We need to talk about it, and we need to keep raising this issue. And even if it raises a question in one person's mind that why is it so, then the purpose has been solved.
It's like the book that you did earlier on these outstanding women, the small biographical sketches of, how many were there? 30? 30, yeah. What made you pick those particular women? Because that again is something which is tied in. It's got to be some quality, something that speaks to you and that also wants to be in a book together with 29 other women. So how are these 30 together?
I think I drew up a list of women some of whom were known, some of whom were completely unknown. And I think the only criteria I personally looked for it, of course, my editors and the rest of the team also went through the list, and few names were okay, few were vetoed, and that's how the process went. But personally, for me, it was somebody who managed to take life by the horns in whatever circumstance, and doing something that was not expected of them, going against what was defined for them, or even if they were in a path that was charted out for them, as with the sports people, going above and beyond how they struggled. I think the struggle and the desire to break free is what I looked for in all the women. That was the main thing. And of course, it had to be post independence to modern day.
So like in this book and in other books also, because a fair amount of research has to go into all that background material that you put in. I mean, here it must have been stupendous because I mean, there's a whole lot that you cover, physics and I mean, I don't even know what. I mean, I have really no background in science, but to me it seems like we're in this capsule and we are jazzing back and forth all the time. And so one is of course the research that you are doing, and the second, interestingly enough, is how you create that place. Because if she's jumping in through the mirror in, you know, say the 1960s at one point, and then she's in 2020 and then even beyond, how do you manage to uh, create that entire landscape around that person so that it's authentic?
With a lot of imagination.
But talk about the research also, because it's heavy duty research, I think, that goes into something like this.
Yeah, I am a fake geek. So my leisure reading comprises nature and physics and Scientific American and all that. And I'm very fascinated by Mr. Musk's plan to put us all on Mars. So I keep reading. I think from ever since I can remember, I've been reading up about humanity, the superhuman, and where are we headed, and all these things into the future. Fascinated by the space programs, and I didn't do science, but I mean, The Big Bang Theory is my favorite show because I get the references on the show, even though I haven't. So I think that fascination somehow comes through, and of course, whenever there was something that I needed to see whether this is feasible or not, because I have to get it somewhat right, I did go through tons and tons of material on the web, through writings, wherever I could find information, spoke to people who were experts in the field to say, is this feasible, this is possible? And only if they said that, okay, this could happen, then I went ahead and put it down. So that, yes, but I don't want the research to show Preeti. It should not seem apparent.
No, it doesn't. Yeah, no, I'm not trying to imply that it shows, but because I've been in publishing and I have been an editor,
Yes,
I mean,
of
I
course.
know that there's got to be a lot more in it than imagination. It has to be bolstered up by fact, because anybody can then turn around and question you that what are you writing and how is this happening, and your editor would be the first to point that out to you.
Absolutely.
So that is why. And, secondly, also this thing about creating that space, creating that landscape, because you're jumping from place to place, you're jumping from time zones to other time zones and different, you don't even call them universes, you call them multiverses. So since you're doing all this back and forth constantly, there have to be very particular things that pin it down. So the book begins with Indira Gandhi's assassination. So it obviously tells you exactly what that day and time and year and everything else. Similarly, I liked so many of these little references to Greece, for example, the film, and there were lots of little things like that, and that Lalita ji ad, which I think all the young people here don't even remember probably. Yeah. So, you know, achhi cheez or sasti cheez mein farak hota hai and all. I mean, you've got all these little pointers which set the scene. So, you know, please just create some of that for us. The Bombay slum,
So I think I drew a lot of that from my growing up in the 70s and the 80s. So a lot of the pointers that you say, a lot of experiences, like the entire opening scene of Indira Gandhi passing away in the news, is quite as it happened, and I remember it. We didn't know it in the news, and it just came in the the 9 p.m. bulletin announced it, and the rumors were there through the day. But you know, there was this entire, if you remember that time, whoever was old enough to remember it, we didn't have the news, it was the BBC that broke the news. And Doordarshan came along much later. So all I drew from that, and I also, of course, the research, as you said. One has to figure out what happened and who said what and all that. And the memories of the ads, I think so much of our lives are defined by the jingles we heard in childhood, and they stay with us. So, yes, Lalita ji is there, Rasana is there, all those are there because she is a very specific product of a Bombay gated community. The girl is a product of the Bombay gated community of a public sector housing society. Typically how it is, and how the melange of people from across the country who come and live there, how the homes are, how the monsoon attacks the buildings, what the monsoon does to the city, the slum areas. It's very visceral, I think, in the way I've described them because I've lived through it and I've been through those areas. And I think I wanted something to be very firm and very grounded, and this is there, this is how it was, so that when you go forward, which we don't know, and I haven't been, not yet at least, into the future, so I have something strong to hold on to and to say that this is how it was, so this is how it could be perhaps.
Yeah, because your writing is really evocative. It's, I mean, other than the fact, like I said, setting the scene for the character to function in a certain landscape, but it's also really very, very rich in the kind of descriptions that are there. And again, you mentioned the Bombay slums, so I particularly remember that, and it's on page 180, because again, that's really, really a lovely paragraph where you describe this person staring from the wall and how this girl jumps across and what she finds on the other side.
118 you
Yeah.
said? Look at me, I don't know the page numbers myself. Hey, Naina called from a perch up the ladder, swinging her feet easily to the other side of the wall. This is a school wall, and she sees somebody looking at her from the other side. Dropping down in one smooth jump, the girl looked up with a fright and fled through the narrow lanes. Naina, who gave chase, lost her, and she realized she was lost herself now. The slum colony she had entered twisted into narrow lanes. She had entered a maze. The doors were curtains and the windows had plants and old dalda tins. The regulatory tulsi sapling to bless the premises and the red rose shrubs stunted from the lack of space. Within the miserliness of the surroundings, hope unfurled itself through the vibrant prints on the saris converted into curtains. The TV antennae that stuck out on the roofs, catching the broadcast from Doordarshan that had just about gone color a few years ago, and added an additional metro channel for the city, which had serials the young saw as a life they could aspire to, and the old saw as a life they could never touch. Curious faces looked at her as she ran past, trying to find a way out of the warren of lanes, slick with water and refuse. A stench she wasn't familiar with flooding her nose, the stench of life decaying. Women cleaning grain on the stoops of their homes, children running snot-nosed, and a group of young men charged with testosterone and joblessness, standing at the corners, wondering best how to while their day away.
Yeah, quite so, because I don't know whether you could hear the whole thing, but even this very last line that you read out about the young men standing on street corners because they're jobless, and we just saw why jobless people also just now jumped into the parliament building, no? I mean, they were carrying placards and jumping in. So what is joblessness doing? So is it also at some level like a political commentary on what goes on? And because of course it's not the story, but there are lots of little things like this that really catch my eye. I'm sure they will of any reader who's actually paying attention to more than just the time travel.
I hope there are many readers like you who catch those little things because one slips then in and hopes to make a comment, but not too loud a comment.
Yeah, not too loud a comment is correct. So, You've had such a varied career, meaning you've done different things, some of which Nazia just told us about, and you've done exceedingly well, and um, accolades and a lot of recognition for all the different things that you've been doing and continue to do. And then alongside is the writing. Does the writing really pay?
No. Short answer.
Yeah, but then you said earlier that writing has to be done and the story is inside you and it needs to come out. But more than that,
It needs to be paid better. I think we all who are in publishing, Preeti, you've been publishing for so long, you know it. It's, there are writers who make money, of course, and there are some who write for the love of writing. So, my advice to anyone looking to get into writing as a full-time career is either you get into the top 10 of the best-selling authors or you keep your day job.
but what about the OTT platforms? Have they not contacted you as yet? They must have. These are all really rich material.
There are conversations and Bibles and all that happening. One has been picked up. They've been sitting on it for 2 years. I'm okay because if it lapses, then I have got my money. Whatever you want to do with it, you don't want to do it, I'll sell it off again to somebody else. So there are conversations, Preeti, but you know how it is with them. Until something is happening and the project is greenlit and taking off, you're never sure what will happen.
Yeah, because now there are lots of platforms which are working between books and film and OTT and all of that, the digital world and the world of words. So I think a lot of writers are looking forward to get their books out, and there are many agencies that work with writers to do that. So I think that's quite an exciting new avenue and new audiences if it does work out.
It is, but there's also this that Preeti, they're looking for a particular kind of writing. If something becomes a flavor of the month, like Mirzapur or Gangs of Wasik, you know, and if that is the flavor of the month, then you'll have Patal Lok, you'll have the whole slew of things coming out in a similar vein. And if political thrillers become the flavor of the month, then they'll be looking at that. So, of course, I understand there's a lot of money at stake. They don't want to take a risk and they don't want to do something. My books are very internal, Preeti. There's a lot of internality in it, and I think that is what somehow. You've read any of them? It scares them. It's horror, but it's not the horror of the jump scares and the blood and the gore. It's a very subtle kind of menacing horror. So they've loved it personally, but somehow when it gets to getting action, it comes to a stop there because it's such an internal kind of work. Let's see, fingers crossed, one lives in hope.
And then, so that also brings me to the question of somebody who's, you really have had an inspiring journey in many ways. Just again, as you mentioned, that there are so many young writers, young women out here also, I'm sure, who would look at it and think that these are all different areas, different fields that are open to you as a person. Not you, just you, but to everybody who thinks that they write and they would like to, be mentoring, they would like to make so many of these things which are open to them. And yet you seem to wear all of it really lightly. How do you stay grounded?
I think, Preeti, you wear so many hats yourself.
No.
I think you just do what you have to do. You keep paddling like mad beneath the surface and gliding on the surface, that's all. And I'm lucky to have a very supportive husband and great staff.
So, if we can go back actually to this thing of the traveling across time zones, and if you can talk more about that, because that is what obviously stands out in this novel. it's also very dark, and this grayness that is actually a character in the book also, but it's also this all-pervasive thing, which I think many people feel in their own lives also, which overwhelms you, and it may not be a place that you sink into, but it's something that just follows you, or you have this feeling from time to time. So just talk about the time travel, how this whole thing came about, and then this feeling of, just feeling so lost, and this grayness thing which takes over.
So the time travel element primarily came out from my need of having the older Anna contact the younger version of herself. But with the time travel has been done beautifully by so many authors before, and in such various ways. You have the entertaining Doctor Who, you have Octavia Butler, you have the time traveler's wife, Audrey Nefnicker. So many have written about and done, and there have been so many shows on time travel. What more could I bring to it? What could I do differently? That's when I brought the multiverse spin in. And everything, everywhere, all at once came out after my book was written and submitted. I must make that disclaimer. So my reason for putting in the multiverse and the time travel was very simple, because I just wanted there to be, if I stood at one point in my life, could there be a way I could look across the entire cross section of my life and examine and get to any point at any time? I think we've been so conditioned to think of time as linear. Even though we grew up with the Mahabharata and Main Samay Ho, which was a huge wheel and circular, we should have got the message right then and there that time is circular and it moves in a loop. But that was something that I wanted to explore, and also because I'm a nerd and because I kept reading about all these theories of multiverses and how they are, I had to include them. The grayness, I think, is something that has been, if you read up a bit about the states of the soul after a person passes away, it's called different things in different cultures and religions. In Catholicism, in Christianity, it's called purgatory. There is grayness in Greek mythology, a grey area where souls are just waiting in limbo before they move on to any dimension, either to be reborn or into whatever thing. So this grayness was something I wanted to explore, and what happens to people who go into comas? Does their consciousness go? Where does it retreat to? So I think I could explore that by bringing in the grayness as a place, as a dimension, as a real, not a refuge, as a place where the soul or the entity does reside for a while. And for more, you'll have to read the book.
So have you also ever looked into a mirror and fallen inside it?
Unfortunately not, I would love to.
Yeah, because it just seems like such a lovely way to be able to traverse the universe or the multiverse.
Very honestly, I did not feel equipped enough theoretically to do actual physical time travel as, with transporting molecules and atoms and across multiverses and how you reassemble them again. This seemed to be the simplest, and it calls for a lot of suspension of belief, but I trust my readers will give that to me.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that was something that we were told right in the beginning, no? This willing suspension of disbelief. Who said that? Somebody said it. Coleridge? I don't know who. Somebody in your literature class long ago said that. There's another point at which there's something about being normal, and then there is a line which says that something about normality being really horrifying. So, is that what you really think? That the normal is actually horrifying in a manner? I have the page number here, so I know that the line is there somewhere.
So I'm not saying that, my character is saying that.
Yeah, but a lot of stuff comes out through the characters. So because no, I mean even more seriously that when because in this the character that she has actually built up is this young girl and then this older woman who are constantly in and out of different worlds, finding their place in it, often without chappals and jutas and
Kapdas.
inadequately clad and all that, but. So therefore, for somebody like that to actually then try to live a life that is normal, which means, having a job, maybe having a family, cooking, whatever. So does that seem horrifying?
It would seem unattainable for her, right? Because you can be just sitting in front of a computer one day and be sucked into another dimension because you're reflected in the space. Any reflected surface can just draw you into another dimension. And you have kids wailing behind, wanting to be changed and fed and all. It's not very conducive to a normal life, right? If this is happening to you all the time. And maybe she yearns for it in a way. She did have novel for a long time. She wasn't going back and forth. But then when she started again, then it didn't stop.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the line here is I was that horrifying thing again, a normal person, a woman, a lover, a mother. Quite damning.
It is damning, but that's what she is. She comes from a mother who is not a normal mother, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it opens up a world of questions anyway. So, and then of course, the fact of hope, because at the end of the day, we need that light. We need that light at the end of the tunnel, at the end of all these many crossings and whatever. So you still need to hope, and I think one of the lines that you also put into the book is about how mankind or humankind needs hope, and if there is hope, you can actually bear everything. Is that your philosophy as well? Will you elaborate on that?
See, in the darkest of situations, I think every human being, the only thing one clings on to is hope. Um, if you look at anyone who's in solitary imprisonment, there is hope that one day they will be released. If you look at anybody who is uh, in whatever circumstances, somebody who's terminally ill, if there is hope that they will somehow recover, they might just recover. If they're holding on to hope, anything is possible because I think the mind body connection is very strong. And somehow, if you condition your mind that things are going to be better, somehow they might definitely get better. At the end of the day, I mean, look at us on Earth. The planet is going to hell. Climate change is creating chaos all around. And we're still sitting here with hope of blinkers on our eyes that it's not going to affect us and nothing's going to happen. The sea levels are not going to rise and the Antarctic shelves are not collapsing and the wildfires are not going to reach us. We're not going to be climate refugees. That's hope in a way, right? That's hope. Everything will be okay and call it hope, call it blinkers. And then there's the other lot who are busy planning on how to terraform Mars and terraform asteroids and to build arcs, to interstellar arcs. That's the other extreme of hope. That okay, we are going to ruin this planet, we are going to make it impossible to live here, but we are getting away from here. We are going to become an interstellar species. That is also hope. So I think all of us just live on hope.
So do you take this particular story forward in another book, in your next book perhaps, or are you working on something completely different, another genre? exploring something else altogether, or do we see something further? Like, I mean, like building on this, like a series of things that will then happen.
No, I'm done with Anna. I think I can't go back to this story again. There's another book that I've done, which is with Khaitan. It should be out next year, which is dark fantasy. Uh, Also noir, but different, completely different. It's a dark fantasy. And there have been two non-fictions. One I'm working on, which is about women entrepreneurs, and one is the sequel to Rising, Rising 2, which also hopefully should be out next year. So, fingers crossed. I don't know what comes out first.
So now this is a more conventional question of giving advice to young writers who may be here or others who are aspiring to write and to make it a career even if it's not terribly paying.
Advice. A, don't
Or
give
then,
up.
sorry, how did you begin? So you began writing.
I began in a very boring, conventional way with the journalist job. So I think that is how you began is a very important thing, Preeti, because it is the riyaz, right, of the daily discipline to just put words down. Most people come to you and say, I want to be a writer, but I can't write, I'm not inspired, I'm not in the mood to write, I can't get the words flowing. That doesn't happen if you're going to write professionally. You just sit down and you, as Hemingway said, bleed. Don't necessarily have to bleed. Keyboards are pretty forgiving. But you have to write, you have to get your 500, 1,000, 2,000, 4,000, whatever your word count is, get it down every day. Read a lot. I don't know, it seems to be a current fashion to say I don't read because I don't want to be influenced by somebody else's writing. And I've heard not one, not two, but quite a few writers say this. And I can't imagine how you can't read if you want to write. You just have to read 1,000 times more than you actually write. And read across. Don't stick to a particular genre. Just read across everything. Whatever catches your fancy, whether it is fiction, non-fiction, humor, thriller, whatever. The more you confine yourself to one thing, I don't know if this is good advice or bad advice. Because I read across genres and I write across genres. So I think it works for me, but I think whatever works for you, but do read extensively. And finally, do your back exercises because your back goes to hell.
No, you're saying read extensively, of course, and across genres, and but you yourself, I mean, not that your reading is, of course, been very wide ranging, but I think I read somewhere that you were now coming to find your voice, kind of thing, and that this is what you wanted to write now. The noir, looking at, I don't want to call it the darker side, but definitely a grimmer reality or something that's confronting the world, and because we are hopeful, we don't see it.
It took me a long while to reach here, Preeti. So in between, I dallied with everything. I wrote humor, I wrote romance, I wrote chick lit. I had great fun writing all of that. But as I said, I think you grow out of that, and I don't think I could ever read or write romance again. Like it bores me to death now. And chick lit also, I'll definitely watch Sex and the City, but I don't think I could write anything similar in that space again. So one grows out of certain like situations and kinds and genres. So maybe I've grown out of those. But for those who haven't, for those who are starting out, just explore everything. I think I was very lucky that I grew up in a time when we had unsupervised reading. There was nothing like, there was children's reading and there was adult reading. There was no young adult.
Yeah.
So I went straight from Enid Blyton to James Hadley Chase and Irving Wallace. And my mother was anything as long as you sit still in one place and read. So I read Erica Jones' Fear of Flying in grade 8. I do not recommend that. So while some amount of parental control is needed, Not quite that, but I would say just let the kids read whatever they want to read. The young people also just don't say that, okay, this is age appropriate for me, so I'm going to read only this. If you're like over 15, 16, just read everything.
Yeah, I think this whole young adult and whatever trying to break up, break these things up into different segments is a newer kind of thing. And I think it's also pushed by publishers to a great extent because, when the book reaches the bookshop, then the bookshop person doesn't know where to keep the book. So you
Yes.
have to have this place. कि यहाँ पे mystery है. Over here we have murder and thriller, and over here we have chiclet. Here is young adult, and here is children. So it's basically that kind of market-driven impulse. I think that makes writers now try to also make their book fit into that
Young adult.
fit into a category rather than just writing and then
I mean, earlier you just had books, you had fiction and you had non-fiction. Now there's such a plethora of genres and subgenres, it gets annoying after a point in time.
yeah, but I'm telling you, this is what it is. The bookseller doesn't know where to slot the book. So basically, shelf mein, where does it need to be placed? That's what it is. So anyway, I've had a great time, and I hope you guys have also enjoyed the conversation. And we now open it up for questions.
This is the scariest moment when there are no questions.
They're just waiting for the mic.
That's
This is
hopeful.
more
Yeah.
something from a personal side. In the last few years, I've been struggling to read, where I probably read 2 books in a month. Now I take 4 to 5 months to finish one book. This is inspiring to me to say that I am going to stick to it and try to read more. My son is 14, so I don't want to make him think reading is not an option. So I am going to do more of that.
Lovely. Good to hear that.
And also, if you choose one of your work that would go onto the digital platform, are you partial towards any one of your books that would go on your platform?
See, the funny ones have been picked up, but the noir ones, I want to see
Keep
them
it
on.
near you.
The funny ones have been picked up, but the noir ones, I want to see them because they are like, I mean, in all immodesty, they should be on the platform.
All the best with that.
Thank you.
Okay, I just want to firstly, absolute pleasure listening to you, the way you were reeling her into her own book and questioning it. As strange as you've grown up in Bombay and you've grown up here, but most of the things that you have said resonates with the struggles that I think women, or the mothers of this age group, it's a constant conversation we have because our mothers were a different mold, our children are different, and we are stuck between 2 worlds which we don't know what is right or what is wrong. So I'm looking forward to reading the book because it might just answer a couple of doubts or self-doubts. After them, you're saying, yeah, normal. Exactly. Because we keep getting it all the time because we don't want to maybe possibly put our children through some things that were not done right. No judgments here. That is what they learned. And then your question, is this the way you parent? And I'm like, okay, this is my parenting, you do yours, So thank you so much for bringing this up. I'm looking forward to reading it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here.
I was also thinking, since everyone, we heard about your books, but I've had the unique privilege of also knowing about you as a person. And I think, a lot of this idea of normal, of us having grown up in so many different places and having come from different cultures. And there's no one culture, and I think you and I are examples of people who have never belonged to this one
Perennial outsiders.
Yeah.
Would you like to share a little bit about that? Because we were just talking about this, this whole intercultural, interreligious, north meets, south meets, west meets, east meets, And Kiran's like very typically.
But I haven't said that. You find the thread of commonality. There's something, suddenly, oh, it happens in your, it's in your culture as well. And then you realize that it's actually not such a diverse world. It just has different faces. Yes, it has different faces, but it is the same thing. It's the same conditioning with a different name, with a different love, as they say. Yeah.
You wanna?
Yeah.
So basically, I come from an inter-religious marriage, and I'm married into a third religion. So that's what Nadia is talking about. And my husband is from the north of India, that's Uttarakhand. My father came from the northwest, his parents came from the northwest frontier province, pre-partition. And my mother is an East Indian Catholic from Bombay with Portuguese blood. So it's a very complex ancestry that I have.
But the challenge is, when I heard Preeti read that, going back to normal getting, so I think one of the conversations I've had with my partner a lot is, why can't you be normal? And why can't you be normal? I'm like, this is normal.
So it's very strange when you, and Nazia knows that as well, when you marry into an Uttarakhandi family. For me, the greatest, they're lovely people, but it's just the conditioning, I think, the way they have been brought up. I remember the first time we had chicken after I was married at home, and it was a lot of people were there because I was a new bride and everybody had come to see me, and oh, that saying business is terrible. But anyway, and I was waiting to eat, and all the leg pieces were going to the men. And I was like, what the? There's nothing left for us. And we were the ones slaving the whole day, making this damn thing, and all the leg pieces are all the good pieces. So there's little cultural things that just never happened in, my maternal home. Because they're like, whoever attacked the food first got the best pieces. So it was something I had to learn and then take the leg piece for myself.
Yeah, but this is a very Punjabi thing. So because I come from Amritsar, this is what all men do. And my husband actually has a philosophy about the chicken leg. So that's how it is. So when you're a child, you never get the chicken leg. Then because we are now conditioned to think that the chicken leg is a good piece, so when our children grew up, we gave them the chicken leg. So we still never got it. So it's like, you will never get it.
No, I made sure from the first month, after that first day, I said, one piece is mine. I'm sorry, I'm having it.
Yeah. So, see, at the end of the day, I think we have to realize that whatever Kiran may say about her book or books, and that they are fiction, and that, you're time travel, and you're this, and it's dark, and it's noir, and it's sci-fi, and everything else. But the thing is that there's a lot of real life. There's a lot of, also I would say philosophy. The philosophy that you need for your daily life. And it's all there, hidden. So you need to find it. Pick up the copy, find it.
Thank you, Preeti.
Thank you, Kiran. Thank you, Preeti. When somebody gives a paper to read, it's so hard. It's like, I'm so bad at reading from a piece of paper. But this part I have to read because I'm also very bad at memorizing. And it's about, because Prabha Khaitan has this tradition of giving a gift, and that gift comes from another culture. So we have an ikat dupatta for you. So for everyone who does not know what ikat is a resin dyeing technique in which the yarn is tied and dyed before the fabric is dyed and woven. So ikat means to bind in the Malay Indonesian language. And since the pattern is created in the yarn itself, both sides of the naked sari are patterned. And in India, sources of ikat designs date back to the 7th century and are seen to be available since then. The art of making ikat sarees is currently practiced in Orissa, Andhra, and Gujarat. I request my co-dominant, the MD of the Casino Group of Hotels, to facilitate our author, Kiran, with this executive sector.
Advice, I just read somewhere that if you're not very familiar with the subject, don't talk about it. So I'm not read your books, and I don't want to just say something for the sake of saying. But I just tell you one thing, when you talk about chicken. So once I was in Ethiopia, and in the restaurant they said the woman will be given a certain pieces of legs, certain pieces of the chicken parts, and the men will be given certain parts. So there was a very cultural communication happening, and if a woman loves a man, he'll serve a certain piece to that man. So there's a lot of, it was very fascinating to me to understand that in Ethiopia, there's a way of communication, how chicken is cut and how it's shared.
Interesting.
So it is, just to give you a feel about David Hall. David Hall is part of the CKS group, and basically we have taken it on lease from the Netherlands government. And basically, when the Netherlands government gave it to us, they said that it's not just to start a cafe or an art gallery, but it's more important that the city's cultural aspect is shared by the common man. And I'm sure such forums like this makes a very important contribution to the local community to come and immerse themselves in culture, art, literature, and all that. So I'm very grateful to Nasia to associate with CGH to have these. I think it's the second one which is happening, and I'm really impressed. Last time I couldn't come, but I was really fascinated by this conversation happening and understanding about the writer, how his emotions are playing out, and all that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
This actually came from Gujarat.
Oh, it's lovely. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you very much. You know, I want to, and we are very grateful to you, Michael, and to Casino, the group, Ranjan Bhotia, David Hall, Panda, your team. I think, you know, a good marriage works like this. This is how, this can work.
Yeah. Everyone gets chicken legs.
Also, a tradition that we have is at the Right Circle. So the Right Circle is a boutique event, which means we only have 30 seats and we only take 30 guests. We also have a copy of Kiran's book for all of you to take back home. And if you would like Kiran to sign it, then you can pick a copy from here and get it signed for Kiran and take it back with you. So I'll pass it around right now after. We'd also like a photograph of the three of you before we leave finally from here.
And sign my book.
Yeah. I think that's something you always forget that we want it in the magazine. And
Sure.
would you like to come out, Michael, for a photo?
Come.
Once again, thank you very much. Thank you all of you for being part of Right Circle 2. We will continue in 2024. We want to do this, one last thing this year, and that's why, we could do it. That one last thing to do this year was this event. So thank you all. Thank you very, very much. Can I request each one of you to pick a copy and then you can get it signed. Thank you.
आओ जी मेरे देश मेरे गाँव मेरी धूप मेरी छाँव से मिलाओ। आओ जी मेरे देश मेरे गाँव मेरी धूप मेरी छाँव से मिलाओ। आओ जी मेरे देश मेरे गाँव मेरी धूप मेरी छाँव से मिलाओ। आओ जी मेरे देश मेरे गाँव मेरी धूप मेरी छाँव से मिलाओ। भूल जाए जो रास्ता थोड़ा वापस आना दौड़ा दौड़ा।